gentlemen, welcome to Anson and Paul's Big Movie Podcast. I'm Anson Chan.
And I'm Paul Morgan. What's the rumpus? Today we're talking about the Darjeeling Limited by Wes Anderson and Miller's Crossing by the Coen brothers.
Oh, it was the Coen brothers? I actually didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, baby. Anson, what movie would you like to start with?
Let's start with Darjeeling.
All right, do you want to start us off?
I would love to. Darjeeling Limited follows the story of three brothers who are on a spiritual quest to kind of rekindle their relationship with one another and kind of find some sort of answers to their various life questions in a way. And in the meantime, get into a whole bunch of different mischief and mishaps as they traverse India on the train known as the Darjeeling Limited. How's that?
The only thing I would add is that they're trying to find their mom.
That well. Too. That's kind of like that's revealed pretty early on.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of like the anchor of all their spiritual seeking type behaviors.
Further, I would say that most of their problems stem from the death of their father, whom they apparently love dearly, and are not really moving on well from that.
Definitely. So, Anson, what in this movie worked for you?
The framing and the camera work. I know this is normally something that you really like.
Hey, but you can't ignore that when it comes to Wes Anderson. He's got a great eye.
Oh, man. Yeah. All the shots were so pretty.
Yeah.
The color, the use of color, the use of sound was amazing. I like how melancholic the tone was throughout the movie, as well as the really a bit of an emotional roller coaster you go on through it. It takes you through your paces. There's a point where the three brothers, played by, I didn't even get into the actors, the three brothers, played by Owen Wilson, Adrian Brody, and Jason Schwartzman, are off the train, and they are in an Indian village, and kind of like are first/third parties to a tragedy, if you will. Yeah.
Yes.
So while there's like a lot of like infighting with the family and childish squabbling, off the train, like it really starts to hit like big emotional tones as the story kind of progresses. There's a moment where there's a flashback. I think it was during this time actually. Yeah, they flash back to just before the father's funeral, and that was such an interesting cutaway. I wasn't expecting it. In this movie, everything that's shown has meaning, just about, except for if it's kind of like wacky India, like taking place in random places, or hey, look, they're playing cricket with a tennis ball. Stuff like that's kind of like random, but like everything that they like focus on within these like three brothers' experience is like very relevant. The short story that Jason Schwartzman wants the brothers to read in the beginning is actually the story of the funeral.
Yeah.
That was great. I love that. And it's such like a minor thing. If you don't pause the movie or read it really quick, you're going to miss that. Owen Wilson's anal personality, his like OCD, almost like control freakishness.
Yeah, he has to kind of control everything they do.
Yeah, it's parodied when they meet the mom, which is a really funny kind of like, oh, he gets it from the mom.
Yeah. Kind
of thing. There's like a lot of like really stunning reveals, like when Owen Wilson takes off his bandages. And like, it's not stunning in a gasp way, but it's stunning in the way that they're able to focus your attention as well as like harness the actor's reactions to what is happening during that scene, like, because you're seeing him for the first time without band-aids, and this whole time you see him all like gauzed up, or whatever. Very few movies, I even think in like Wes Anderson's repertoire, have like this much, I hate to use the Lucas phrase, but like, I guess like movie poetry, where everything kind of like quote-unquote rhymes or refers back to each other. It's just such a wholesome experience when you watch it. There's a lot of great visual gags that happen with the way that Wes Anderson plays with the camera or focuses on reactions. Like there's one scene where Jason Schwartzman, after he maces Owen Wilson and Adrian Brody, runs into the dining car, but little did he or we, the audience, knows that it's a glass door, and as soon as he hits it, he just shatters the whole glass, and then the birthday party stops, and then the pissed off, I don't know if you'd call him the conductor, but he's like the head kind of like waitstaff guy. That just like pissed off reaction is just so funny.
Yeah.
It's just so much heart and so much care went into the writing and to the filming. Now I watched this twice in between recordings. I watched it the first time like very focused, and I loved it. I just was laughing out loud constantly. Second time I was like watching it just as a refresher, so I was like playing Dark Souls while I had it on, and oh my god, this movie you have to see. You have to appreciate the camera work and like the expressions that the actors give, because narratively and script wise, it's a little bare bones, but
Yeah.
this is I think one of his prettier movies, and yet it's one of his like I think lower rated ones overall, and that didn't get a lot of fanfare if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it has a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 78 on Metacritic, which is one of his lower scores.
It's definitely more, I guess, what you would call a Wes Anderson type of movie. He's a little bit more mainstream now with the Grand Budapest, but this feels like distinctly Wes Anderson, definitively. If you were to point to like a movie being like of his, maybe his like quintessential, I'd say either like Life Aquatic or this.
You wouldn't
In terms of the way it
okay.
exudes his style. What were you saying?
I don't know. I mean, I see a lot of his signature visual elements and performance styles in this, but I would definitely not call it one of his signature movies. I think of Rushmore or the Royal Tenenbaums when I think of like a signature Wes Anderson style movie. But
Okay,
but at the same time, I think I understand where you're coming from.
I think when I bring up the Life Aquatic and Darjeeling Limited, I think I mean that more along the lines of like the visuals and like adults acting like children, kind
Yeah.
of.
It definitely has the adult children thing going for it pretty hardcore. That's for sure.
Oh man, the more I think about this movie, the more I just kind of like smile. I'm just reminded of funny scenes that I really enjoyed. And then you didn't get a chance to watch Hotel Chevalier, which is the short that's supposed to kind of air before this movie in theaters. It's like a 15-minute short with, I think, Natalie Portman. Oh man, it's so good. It's so good. Which kind of recontextualizes Jason Schwartzman's story arc in this movie. And I thought that was just really such a nice touch.
I kind of like the idea of supplementing the story of one movie with like a shorter, more compressed movie. Even though I didn't watch it, I like the idea of doing that.
Even like not knowing that exists,
Yeah.
this movie like stands perfectly on its own. But then having that, it just makes it a little bit more quote unquote magical.
Yeah.
To kind of experience the movie through another lens when you kind of have the backstory, just not even like a real hard backstory, but just like the day leading up to him going to India.
Yeah.
Which is just like, it's so great. Oh man. So remember in the scene where they're like first getting into the car together and they're like saying, "Hey, what's up?" Jason Schwartzman like pulls out the Voltaire No. 5 from his suitcase, the perfume.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Who put that there? What's her name? She had access to your belongings. How'd they get there?" It's like, "She saw me in France." They make a really quick point of like showing that scene happen in Hotel Chevalier, which is really funny. So much of this movie worked for me. I'd say very little didn't work for me. I liked the Indian actors. I liked how memorable like all the faces were from like the Indian people. They just look so bizarre with their mustaches of like another era from like maybe the early 1900s, like maybe even like 1800s.
Yeah.
It's so funny. The colors reminded me a lot of like Zhang Yimou, like
Very,
Hero.
very saturated colors.
Yeah,
lots of yellows and deep kind of dark
very
reds
vibrant.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the turquoise and the greens and the yellows.
Yeah.
Like a woman, a gun, in a noodle shop, kind of. Where like
Definitely,
the
yeah.
vistas are like very colorful, and this is like the people's clothes and their buildings are just really bright.
Yeah.
Really appreciated that.
This movie is very pretty to look at.
Yeah. And I like the love story. Like everyone kind of has like their own like.
You mean Schwartzman and the lady from the train?
Yeah, Schwartzman and Rita.
Yeah.
And then Adrian Brody and his relationship with his wife. He's like, I thought I was going to get divorced, but I'm having a kid. I thought that was a really nice touch. Owen Wilson doesn't really have, I think like a love interest, but like his is more like, I'm coming off of, as it's revealed later, some really messed up stuff going on in my life.
Yeah.
Which is kind of why I wanted this to happen right now.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful in its own way. Oh, it's just so great. I could go on and on and on, but I think I've said my main points. Paul, what did you like about Grand Budapest. Not Grand Budapest. Haha. The train movie. Darjeeling Limited.
The Girl on the Train.
Yes.
As with all Wes Anderson movies, I liked the visuals a lot. He just has a really great eye for what, how to serve a story using visuals. I think probably the things that like worked the best for me were the kind of muted, subtle interactions between the guys and like the people who obviously couldn't understand them at certain points. So like when they're in the village after the tragedy and they're about to go to the thing for the person who the tragedy befell, if that's not too vague, if you know what I mean. I liked the flashback to the car scene. It's kind of one of my favorite parts of the movie. I don't know why. I feel like I didn't really care too much about any of these characters for any real reason, but for some reason that scene felt more emotionally impactful than the rest of the movie to me.
Yeah.
I think those are kind of the main things. I don't have a lot of negative to say about this, but I don't have a lot of positive to say about it either. It's just kind of like an interesting movie. It's one of those ones where it was my first Wes Anderson movie, and I don't mean this as a slight, but I've liked every other Wes Anderson movie more than this.
Ah.
So I don't know, like, I know that sounds rude or something, but it's like,
No, I wouldn't say that.
I don't have a lot positive to say, but also, not too much negative really. So mostly the visuals are just kind of on par with what I expect from Wes Anderson, which is good. And the script, I had a hard time caring about these characters, but at the same time, they had moments of emotionality or connection that really kind of took me aback. Like moments where you would expect the three brothers to be in chaos and then they would kind of come together in some way, if that makes sense. The tragedy in the village being a big one of those.
This was also this was actually also my first Wes Anderson movie, which we discussed before picking this movie.
Yeah, I think I saw it at the Grand Cinema in Tacoma when it came out.
Nice. Unlike you, I was able to really empathize with these characters, because call it some form of narcissism, but in each of their own way, I think I can really relate with really all of them. Like Jason Schwartzman is like some trauma related to past relationships, which makes me care about him. I liked his character the
best for sure. Yeah,
I can really relate with Adrian Brody's character, with his like fear of relationship and commitment.
I relate to that very acutely.
Yeah, he's like, I just thought I'd get divorced.
Yeah.
I 100% get behind that. And I'm like, wow, I know that kind of like fear and also like, I'm going to be a dad moment. Yeah. Like that, the bag of emotions I could just totally understand and also like put myself in those shoes very well.
Yeah.
Then Owen Wilson's near-death experience and kind of like, I want to like really have my relationship back with my family. Yeah. Like if you know me and my history, like that's like a huge... Especially at the time when I watched that, I was like, wow, this is like the movie that speaks to me the most of any movie I've seen at that time. And today it's a little bit settled down more so, but like I still, like I said, can empathize with all of these things and really get behind. So I think from an emotional point of view, from my perspective, this still hits it out of the park for me. But maybe you don't feel as strongly toward the characters because I guess you're not as narcissistic, or maybe don't kind of have a similar background to the characters that maybe I do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it's narcissism. There's something about the extremely slow reveal of all the information where it was like, by the time I knew all the context for why they're acting the way they are, I have already passed the point where I could have cared, if that makes sense.
I understand.
It's not, I don't hold that against the movie. It's just like, if I was writing the script, I don't usually have script notes, but if I was writing the script, I would have revealed a little bit more about their situation earlier on. Because I feel like it one of the artful things about this movie is it's a very slow build, and you don't really even know what you're building towards until, quite a few minutes into the movie.
I really, really like that aspect, though, where you get that fly-in-the-wall feeling. Like, the way the cameras are, like, the way the camera moves, the way, like, it's like that omnipotent third person almost, but not totally omnipotent because you don't know what the hell's going on with these guys.
Yeah.
I I really, really, really liked.
There are a lot of really great scenes where the camera seems to be completely stationary and just kind of watches them, which I really appreciated.
It feels like you're spying on a moment in their life, and I really like that. And I also like how there's not a lot of backstory to this, because
it can overcomplicate things.
Yeah, and I can appreciate it for its very present, like in the present tense kind of feel it has.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, still very much lingering in the past of their unresolved grieving of their father's passing, which is just outstanding.
Yeah,
so
and their want to kind of have separate lives from each other.
And yet at the same time kind of like tugging towards like we have to still be cohesive as a family.
Yeah, we have to still be a family.
Yeah, there's like so much subtlety in this I really, really admire.
Yeah.
So I guess
it's definitely a lot less on the nose in terms of what it's talking about than the rest of his movies, which I appreciate as well.
I would agree to that too. But to what you were saying earlier, that like you said this is your least favorite of his movies.
Yeah.
I put this above Rushmore. I do not put this above Life Aquatic. For me, this movie kind of like sits on the side. Like, I don't want to compare it to like, I guess some of his other ones, like Grand Budapest or Fantastic Mr. Fox or Moonrise Kingdom.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like this exists in a different emotional space than what
certainly,
the other movies go for.
I agree with that.
So it's hard for me to kind of like put that on that scale. Because it kind of belongs on its own thing. It's like the price of a onion is going to be different than the price of a watermelon.
I think what we have been seeing the last like 5 or 6 years or so with regard to Wes Anderson movies has been like the fullest realization of his signature stylistic elements with unique story points that come from writers who are better than he is. For example, like Fantastic Mr. Fox and Grand Budapest were both based on other works, and Moonrise Kingdom, I think he co-wrote with someone else that he doesn't always write with. I could be wrong, though.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
But this one, I think, is kind of just like, it's not necessarily trying to be a Wes Anderson movie. Oh, no, he wrote Moonrise with Roman Coppola, who wrote this one with him. But, like, this one, I think, it definitely stands on its own. It's not a typical Wes Anderson movie, even though it has a lot of his typical elements in it.
I feel like it's something only he can do, though.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I know art house is, like, a really generic term, but, like, if I were to have to, like, say, there's an art house movie you should see, I'd put this on a pedestal for art house movies.
Interesting.
Just, like, very enjoyable.
I would, too, but the thing that sucks about saying that is that I feel like you would have to encourage people to watch it twice. Like, I feel like this is one of the ones where you would really benefit from, like, watch it once, watch that, short film that goes along with it, really think about it, and then watch it again and kind of, be wowed a little bit more.
I don't know. I think, well, maybe. Because I'm totally biased, because like I said, when I saw it the first time, and even the second time, like, so many years after I've seen it for the first time,
yeah,
I still got hit, like, the first time with just, like, how strongly impactful it was. No, the second time I watched it was way more for the comedy, but the first time I saw it, I was, like, totally captivated. Not to say the second time watching was not captivating for its other technical reasons. The first time was more for the, again, like, the characters.
Sure.
So I think it really depends on the person. This might be a highly subjective kind of movie. Where
it might be, yeah. I mean, I know that one of the things that I think is funny about this movie on a personal level is that one of my best friends, who I have made almost everything I've ever made movie and music video wise in Los Angeles, his brother owns a production company that he works at, and these two guys are like the people whose movie taste I respect almost more than anyone's, and they both fucking hate this movie with a passion. And I happen to disagree with them. I mean, I don't hate it, but it's just funny. I think that just feeds into your idea that this is very subjective in terms of whether people like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. I also know people who just absolutely loathe art house. They would hate this movie.
Yeah.
Even though, like, for all of its technical merits, all of its wackiness, and kind of, like, emotional tones and everything else, they would just hate this movie.
Yeah.
But, like I said, for me, I can dig it.
No, definitely. Was there anything? Tell me about what didn't work for you in this one.
One more thing I want to mention. I always do this. That I want to point out that I really liked in this movie. I thought Rita was dynamite. I thought she was very pretty. But anyway, anything that didn't work for me, I guess. I think the performance of Owen Wilson's assistant was a little weak.
I thought him and Owen Wilson were the two weak links in the cast.
I appreciated Owen Wilson being Owen Wilson, I guess. But
yeah.
I would agree to that too, although I wouldn't degrade the performance of Owen Wilson by saying that. Fuck, I don't know the name of the actor. But anyway. Yeah, his assistant was a little weak.
Yeah. I don't know that we needed to even see that character super much. I almost kind of like the mythos that they established in one of the first few scenes of like, oh, he's riding in a different car. You might not ever see him.
Ever see him.
Yeah, exactly. And then he just shows up.
I thought that was really funny, though.
No, that was a great opportunity
for
comedy. I thought it would have been kind of even cooler if they actually never showed him, you know. But, you know, it provides a lot of humor that they did.
It kind of like sets the tone for like the whole debunking of the mysticism or the mystique of not only the narrative of what Owen Wilson's trying to say, but I guess the whole spiritual quest, where they constantly make it a point to like show how like bizarre the religious rituals are to a complete foreigner.
Yeah.
And then
speaking of which, can I say one more thing I liked?
Yeah.
I forgot to mention this. I did like the idea of these guys being like relatively insufferable and also being white people who go to India for some generic, non-specific spiritual quest, because that is just... Gosh,
I love that too.
It's almost like a total flip on the head of something like Eat, Pray, Love or like Under the Tuscan Sun, where it's like,
yeah,
oh, these foreigners go to this, or these like Americans go to this wacky foreign place and they meet all these wacky stereotypes and then they grow as a person. In this one, it's like, oh, these like stereotypes of Americans go and then they experience real people and they actually have an interesting time. I like that juxtaposition.
I loved that too. Yeah, and then when they show the Indian people practicing Christianity and it just seems so foreign when they do it was also different. Really funny. Yeah, that was just amazing. The way that they sing the hymns are just like, it's just so alien. Everything, like, compared to what you've seen in India up to that point, just say, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's so great. And also the moment where they actually do experience real spirituality in the tragedy in the village kind of thing is just so beautiful. Where, like, because they were a part of it, because they, you know, they have some skin in the game and context for what's happening, just, it doesn't feel alien anymore. It just feels like very sacred at that particular time. I thought that was so beautiful. The way they explore spirituality in this very wacky and yet at the same time very emotional and very true way. It's great. But that's not what I didn't like about it. I think just because we got sidetracked.
I just had to mention that one thing. Was there anything else that didn't work for you?
You know, I'm not a fan of that lady, the mom character.
Angelica Houston.
Yeah, Angelica Houston one... I've seen her in a couple of the Wes Anderson movies. The only thing I think I really know her from, and I'm always a little bit underwhelmed by her performances. I like that she's
very held back in Wes Anderson's movies.
Yeah, I appreciate that she's part of the ensemble cast.
Yeah.
But I'm always a little bit like, when she's in it. So, bringing it back to like the Grand Budapest Hotel, that Indian kid in the Grand Budapest Hotel, he's kind of like underwhelming compared to how great Ray Fiennes is. And in this movie, I feel like her performance and the assistant's character both feel like you're being completely outshined by all the other talent around you.
Yeah.
And I think that's about really the only things that didn't really work for me. Paul, what didn't work for you in this movie?
I kind of already briefly mentioned this, but it's just, to me, even having been charmed by it the first time I watched it, just by virtue of its style being so strong, I had trouble caring about the characters, and I only really came to care about them after I really deeply thought about it for a long time. I don't think that's a flaw with the script. It's maybe just my own read of someone else's work. Other than that, I don't know. Looking back on Wes Anderson's filmography, I find this movie to be interesting and unique, but there's something about it that feels off to me, and I can't quite tell what. It's almost like Wes Anderson's signature actor directing style doesn't quite lend itself to the emotionality I feel should be in certain parts of the script. And I don't have a lot of specific examples to point to. I just know there are times when the characters, or the actors, I mean, are like ridiculously held back and talking quietly and in very monotone voices when I feel like they should be like practically crying or like riddled with anxiety, or, you know, there's certain parts that just feel like the acting style that's in a typical Wes Anderson movie is too compressed. Like the highs are lower and the lows are higher. So it's just kind of this middle ground of like monotone vocals and, you know, muted facial expressions. And for some reason that just, it felt wrong for these characters a lot of the time. That's part of the reason why I think Owen Wilson was one of the weaker performances, because he did have like the dialogue and the maybe hand motions that went along with like someone who compulsively needs to order others around and, you know, have control over their environment. But a lot of times when his character might have been outwardly freaking out or something, it was just kind of this blank stare and this monotone voice. And I have trouble feeling like that's what the script called for in terms of performance. And it wasn't just him.
I would disagree, because I know exactly what you're saying, and I can totally understand why you say that. But to that being of like his style, when the highs are lower and the lows are higher, when you do see actual very, very low points in a couple of these characters, Adrian Brody, for example, like, we're going to bring it up again, the tragedy in the village kind of scene.
Yeah.
He can't keep it together. Even though he's keeping it together to an extent, that just feels so much more impactful because, like you said, the lows are higher usually, but when you're given that bit to be lower. Also, in the scene where they're in the car shop, the Luftwaffe auto body shop, and they're like, you know, yelling at this German guy, and he just realizes, oh, you're the sons, you know, his emotion painted onto their anxious, monotoned performances, or more or less like grayer performances.
Yeah.
I won't say monotoned. Makes that feel so much more emotional. Like, the outside emotion of the characters surrounding them feels better, if you will. Like, Rita, when she's crying, and Jason still has that moment where, like, I think you're going to be really important in my life, or I want you to be really important in my life, and I think you will. And, like, she doesn't know what to do. And, like, he is still kind of, like, you know, his lower is higher. That feels very emotional, too, because you get that very alien sense. Not only are you a fly in the wall to these three people, they feel alien to themselves in a way, where everyone else is reacting to them. And I really like that juxtaposition.
I can dig that.
I think that's what Wes Anderson goes for a lot in all of his movies.
Yeah.
Life Aquatic, especially. To a lesser extent, Grand Budapest, because Ray Fiennes is just like so...
He's very emotive. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. And that works really well. It can go either way, right?
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah. So I think... And I would agree with what you said about Owen Wilson, though. I think there were maybe possibly moments he could have... but I don't know. I also appreciate the fact that maybe for his character, he does need to be in more control. But then again, it could just be me making an excuse for possibly his poor acting. But it works. It works to kind of like fill in the
if it
gap.
worked for you, I don't want to deny that because it's very subjective how you feel about acting. But you know, you make a good point.
Yeah, but yeah, I can totally see why you wouldn't like their low highs and high lows.
Yeah. So would you recommend this movie to a friend?
God,
it's a tough one, right?
If you can appreciate the craft. God, yeah. If you like Wes Anderson movies, I say definitely give it a watch because I bet you've never even heard of this or seen it.
Yeah,
like it's a hard movie to come by.
Definitely. I feel like this is a movie that people are only in the future going to ever watch as a sort of like
to see them all.
Yeah, exactly. Like going through Wes Anderson's entire filmography.
I would agree to that, and I think that's kind of a shame. I think it's a bit of a disservice to the movie, but I understand why it needs to hold that place in people's expectation, really, because it is not a movie for everybody.
Yeah.
I almost want to recommend this, like, I don't want to sound racist, but here I go. I played cricket with my Sri Lankan and Indian friends at St. John's, and we used a tennis ball. So that scene where it was, look, they're playing cricket with a tennis ball, I thought that was really funny, right? I wanted to show them this movie and see how they react to it. I mean, it's not even it takes place in India. It's not really about India, but there's like a lot of cultural things, and maybe they'd get a kick out of like seeing the really foreign American white guy in India experience.
Yeah. And it's also unique in
Indian
that they
things.
don't make a parody of Indian culture.
Oh God, no!
It seems
it's
like
genuine.
regular Indian folks just kind of being there and being alive, you know.
And I don't think it's anything like that's like super duper stereotypical outside of maybe like their mustaches and shit. But like, I think it's pretty, like I said, genuinely admiring of the culture, if you will, in the way it depicts it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me to try to show them and be like, huh? It'd be like if a fucking white guy came up to me and wanted to show me kung fu movies, and it's like, yeah, there you go. But they're like Indian and Sri Lankan. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But still, I don't want to come off as like that really culturally insensitive rube who's like as sincere as he is. You know what I mean? Like Indian stuff. Am I right? So
yeah,
I don't know.
And they do a good job of painting the characters as being that way for the audience, anyways. But without it being super obnoxious. It's like, oh, this is the strongest Indian antihistamine I could find. Oh, and I have the strongest Indian painkiller I could. But it's like they're not really going crazy over that. It's like they just casually mention it and then it's over, you know?
Yeah. I would actually recommend this movie, unless they are absolutely like hate art house, just as a service to Wes Anderson, and maybe if they do connect to it like how I did, then maybe that could start a conversation. So I would, out of like completely selfish reasons, definitely recommend this movie. How about you, Paul? Would you recommend this movie?
I don't know. I probably would. I would say, you know, let me see it a couple times. Read about it in between your 2 times watching. Because I usually watch our movies 2 times. I only watched this one once. And, you know, I still thought it was super interesting the way I did when I first saw it back when it came out. So, yeah, I'd recommend it.
Nice. Well, with that in mind, guys, time to get to the real rumpus. Rumpus?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What's the rumpus? All right, time to get to the real fucking rumpus. Paul, would you like to talk about Miller's Crossing?
Yeah, so Miller's Crossing is a 1990 neo-noir type gangster movie by the Coen brothers. Stars Gabriel Byrne, Marcia Gay Harden, John Turturro, John Polito, Albert Finney, a few other people. Basically concerns this guy, Tom Regan, who is like a go-to guy for like pretty much everyone in the criminal underground. And his playing of 2 kind of rival gangs in what I assume is like the 1920s or 30s-ish. Yeah, like Prohibition era type stuff. Because I remember they mentioned like the, you know, these people have been known to play games of chance and imbibe in alcoholic beverages. So yeah, like Prohibition era type time, and basically his inability to stay out of trouble and his kind of abilities to be reliable to some people and kind of play other people against each other and stuff like that. Anson, what worked for you in this movie?
I really enjoyed the narrative. I really enjoyed the double cross, triple cross, but this is like a double cross in the way of like rival gangs and the police and politics, and this is a double cross in the way of like relationship and like, you know, affairs. Speaking of ensemble casts, again, I enjoyed seeing, you know, Steve Buscemi and John Turturro in another Coen Brothers movie. I actually didn't know this was a Coen Brothers movie when I saw it.
Oh, shit.
So this makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I like that classic Irish versus Italian mob story, which there's really not a lot of movies that I know that go into great depth about it. Like, what really I come to think of first is like Gangs of New York, but that's Irish on Irish. So,
Yeah.
I liked the character Tom Regan, where he kind of like fills that consigliere kind of role. Wasn't the Godfather's consigliere also named Tom Regan or Tom something?
It was Tom. I think it was Tom something.
Yeah. He also liked the smell of napalm in the morning. So Tom was a cool consigliere slash like information man slash grifter.
Yeah.
Very much in the way that like Orson Welles is the third man. Not in the movie The Third Man, but in the way the radio show works. He's just like the guy who knows everything. The guy who everyone can rely on but can't trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone has a relationship with. I like that idea that someone could fulfill that role.
Yep.
I liked the way that I think the events in the movie kind of like dictate the way Tom kind of has to adjust to certain situations and like be a certain way, be a certain person to certain people. I thought that was really cool. Where like you don't know where the planning started and where the reaction began, or what created, the chicken or the egg scenario.
Yeah.
You don't know where it all begins is really cool. I like all the old-timey slang they use. I thought that was really fun.
Oh my gosh, they could write a book on the vocabulary used in this fucking movie.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. The words they had for, like, the different ethnicities and just, like, what's the rumpus and all that crazy stuff. I thought it was really funny. They very well could have just made this up.
Yeah, right? It just felt so authentic.
Yeah.
They played it off so seamlessly that it was like, well, that pretty much could be the way it was.
Yeah, because I don't think anyone has ever said, what's the rumpus? Because, like, movies in the 50s, I don't think I've ever seen anyone say, what's the rumpus?
Yeah, right.
And they take place in Prohibition. Yeah, it's like, because the Coen brothers like to play with language.
Yeah.
They like to add their own little flair, and I think that was part of it, and I thought that was just really funny. I liked, actually, who's the character? Who's the guy?
I don't know.
Leo. Albert Finney.
Oh, Albert Finney, yeah.
I only really know him from Big Fish. If you know that movie, I think my favorite...
The Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, my favorite Tim Burton movie. And I really liked his performance in that. And to see him in this was kind of nice, although I think he was a little bit hammy. Yeah, and I just like the setting overall. I love that old New York kind of feel. What the Coen brothers do so well is just put you in a neighborhood. Where,
oh, God. Yeah.
In, like, A Serious Man... in their, like, suburban middle America motherfucking cul-de-sac. It just feels so real and so right.
Yeah.
They're able to build the environment in the world so well, and then this is no exception.
Yeah. Have you ever watched the TV show Fargo that was based on their movie?
Nah, but
they do a really good job of doing that in that show as well, and they produce that. It's like everything they touch, they're like, let's make this as authentic as fucking possible, man.
Yeah, Fargo was also a good one where in like Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So funny. The only one I can kind of bat an eye towards like is the one that I hate. Not I don't hate, but the one that I didn't care for so much.
Hail Caesar.
Hail Caesar, yeah. But what do I know? I'm not a California movie man. So, but yeah. Those are the things I really liked. Nothing too crazy. What about you, Paul? What worked for you in this movie?
As usual, the environment was great. I thought the plot was great because it doesn't seem like a typical plot. They say there's only like 6 basic plots of a movie, and I feel like the Coen brothers always make it feel like their stories are unique, no matter what elements they might have from cliches or, genre conventions, stuff like that. So I really like the story.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? What are those 6... What's the sixth thing?
There's that theory of like there's only really 6 narratives in all of storytelling, or
I don't know this.
It's like a common theory on the internet. I would explain it, but I don't know it well enough to
go into it.
Yeah, I don't really know it well enough to go into it, but basically from the Wikipedia page it says the 7 basic plots are based on a book that a guy wrote that says every story can be boiled down to the 7 basic plots, which are overcoming the monster, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return, comedy, which is a set of conventions that results in one thing, tragedy, which is a set of conventions that results in a tragedy, and rebirth. So it's kind of like if you were to boil every movie, book, and story down, they would fit into one of those in some broad way. And I guess I wasn't really saying that to explore that concept. I was saying that more just to say that when the Coen brothers write a movie, it always feels unique. It doesn't ever really feel too ham-fisted. And this is kind of the quintessential example of that to me. I love the character of Tom Regan. He's always getting the shit beat out of him. He's always coming back to this woman he knows is not good for him. And yet somehow he endures, and he is desired by everyone, and he's needed by everyone, and he's... I love that character. I think that character is the reason why I love this movie so much. He's like a good guy in his heart, but he's just so useful to so many bad people, and he has so many like little vices that get in the way of him having a functional life that it's just so fucking interesting to watch that character. I loved Steve Buscemi's weird little character. I love how fast he talked and the parlance he used. John Polito's character was also just a delightful character to behold, especially with his like... I guess to me, John Polito's character is like a take on the Italian mobster that I've never seen before. He's like a stereotype in some ways, and then in other ways, he's this completely unique dude with his own set of vocabulary that understands the world in a different way than the Irish mob does, and gets very personally offended. The characters in this movie are so wonderful. Marcia Gay Harden's character I thought was great as well. She kind of wants to take Tom Regan's shit so they can be together, but she kind of is sick of him because he's always fucking up and being a dick. I love the character of Bernie Birnbaum because of how much I hated him. John Turturro's character. I loved John Polito's son as well. That little fat kid. Oh my fucking God. That was hilarious every time he was on screen.
He just looks so goofy.
Yeah, and he's so fucking stupid, and his dad's all calling him smart so that his henchmen will agree with him and stuff. Yeah. Oh my God, I fucking love that shit.
Can we talk about John Polito really quick?
Yeah.
But John Polito, we were saying he subverts stereotypes, but is totally a stereotype in some ways.
Yeah.
He is like a bit of a deconstructed classic Italian mafioso in the romantic sense.
Yes.
Where he has the moral ideals of like the Godfather, like played by, Apocalypse Now.
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando, thank you. Slipped my mind. And like those type of characters.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he also has that edge about him that's kind of like a totally real life Italian stereotype of just like really boisterous and like, what's the matter with you?
Yeah. And he's like so deeply personally
face.
offended at everything that happens to him, regardless of whether it's meant as a personal offense.
Right. And that's like kind of goes back to the deconstructed Italian mafioso romance idea of like the whole honorable mafioso character, right? Or like a personal slight is a huge slight, right?
Yeah.
And where that's kind of like a really interesting portrayal. And then you have like the Irish mob, which really... Well, actually, I want to talk about Bernie Birnbaum. He's like a really stereotypical Jew, if you will, in this
Interesting.
movie. Oh, he's, like the reputation of them being like really shady or opportunistic, right? And so his character is to be played like, I'm just like a super duper really bad portrayal of a Jew, basically.
Interesting.
I didn't like Bernie Birnbaum at all. I didn't like that I didn't like him.
Oh, you didn't like him as a person?
You liked that you didn't like him. I didn't like that I didn't like him.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah.
He was like a really super duper stereotypical Jew. And this is what the Coen brothers feel like we're trying to do, which is kind of like show the play between these ethnic groups as it was very commonly portrayed, or like...
Sure.
Because it plays with what is the real world perception and what life was like at the time, what's the fucking rumpus or whatever.
Yeah.
And what is portrayed in the movies, which I thought was a really fun mix. But John Turturro's character was just like straight up a bad Jew all around. And I was like, oh man.
Which, I mean, if they're going to put in stereotypes of any ethnic group, the one they have the biggest right to is Jewish people, since they are Jewish.
Sure. And I mean, like, it's also in New York, too.
Yeah.
That's, like, not a uncommon conception of Jewish people, unfortunately.
Sure.
Yeah, the Irish ones were the only ones I didn't quite really see any real or fake world portrayal.
Yeah, they were kind of like neutral almost. They were just kind of like regular dudes.
Totally. You got like I don't know. Because where I could say I saw this really nice deconstruction from John Polito and John Turturro, I don't get that from Leo, the Irish mob, or really the politicians either.
Or from Gabriel Byrne. Except for the fact that he's a drunkard.
Which one's Gabriel? Oh, yeah.
The main dude.
Like, aside from them just, like, drinking whiskey constantly, because they just felt like more the noir... He's the noir detective, so of course he's going to have a drink.
Yeah.
It wasn't played to show them as drunks either. It was just kind of like, they drink, and they're a gang.
Yeah.
So, I'm a little bit on the fence about how far they went with the Irish.
Interesting.
Yeah. Cause
Not
I feel
far enough, you would say.
Yeah. Would you agree to that? Because...
I mean, as far as, like, they push some stereotypes and not others, I definitely think they pushed the Irish ones way less than they pushed.
I don't even think they pushed it at all. You know what I mean?
I mean, there was that kind of very, very opera-like musical number with Oh Danny Boy. But,
Oh Danny Boy?
Yeah, but I mean, other than that, yeah, not really a lot of references to the Irish culture or anything like that.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anything that, would have signaled that.
What were you saying before I cut you off? Because you were just talking about John Polito.
Oh, just the characters that I liked. I guess moving on from there, I would say I loved the Oh Danny Boy scene. That made me laugh so hard the first time I saw it. First time I saw this movie was in film school, and we were all watching it as a class in this big theater. And me and just one of my friends were just bursting out laughing the whole time, and everyone else was just like, what? Because it was like, this movie feels so grounded in a lot of ways, but that scene is like almost cartoony. It's like almost Quentin Tarantino-ish.
Yeah. No,
like exactly it shows the guy from outside the window, and he's just shaking and his bullets are coming in, and it like hitting his back like way too accurately for way too long, and then the music's like swelling at that point. I love that scene so much.
That scene definitely had a feeling of self-awareness, where it was like, we know certainly. We're doing something really corny, but we're going to do it really well.
Yeah,
that the Coen brothers can do just so well.
Yeah, they can get away with that, unlike most directors.
Yeah.
I also liked how some scenes seem to be mirror images of themselves to kind of show Tom Regan's ability to waltz between the two gangs. So, like, there's that one scene at the beginning where John Polito's gambling operation / speakeasy gets busted up. And Tom, like, pretty casually is able to walk out the front door, talk to the police while it's happening, everything. And then the same thing happens when they bust up one of Leo's operations.
Yeah.
Which is he's just able to grab a bottle of booze, walk out the front door, talk to people, say, hey, how's it going? What's going on?
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
The cops.
Yeah. I like the kind of mirror imaging they did there, kind of like a callback almost.
Yeah.
And then I love the theme music a ton. Theme music was great. And then I guess the last thing, the cinematography, as always, was just delightful. Just really well-composed shots, holding on things just the right amount of time, giving these characters, emotion and or feeling when the actors could have been horrible and the camera angles could have read their way of thinking very, very easily. So I appreciate that. Did we already go over what you enjoyed?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, so was there anything that didn't work for you in this one?
Yeah, I thought Steve Buscemi was a little bit too out of place in this movie. He was not really representative of any sort of ethnic group. He was just Steve Buscemi in this movie of very, very memorable characters. And I was like, it's just Steve Buscemi.
Fair enough.
I was not totally thrilled by the performance of Leo.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I thought it was a little bit dialed in by Albert Finney.
I thought it was serviceable, just not a highlight.
Yeah, exactly. That's a little bit of a shame. Yeah, I didn't know this was a Coen Brothers movie, because I didn't even catch the narrative cleverness, nor did I really see the visual, I guess, cleverness or masterfulness that usually goes along with the Coen Brothers movie when I saw this movie.
It definitely is way earlier in their career.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe it's because this is a 1990s version or movie, so...
Yeah, I'm looking at their filmography, and I think this is only their third feature-length movie. So it went Blood Simple, which is the A Woman, a Gun, and a Noodle Shop, Raising Arizona, which is the Nicolas Cage one, and then this one.
Okay, yeah, so they weren't developed yet, quite.
Yeah, they were still kind of working on their style, which, I mean, Raising Arizona is very stylistically interesting, but Blood Simple, I struggled to find any remnant of, like, the signature Coen Brothers style in that movie. It's just kind of an interesting, relatively well-done movie.
Yeah.
So I think this is kind of them on the road to evolving their style.
I'd agree. I was not thrilled by the performance of Eddie Dane. I thought he was really B-movie, kind of like...
He was like a cartoon of a neo-noir character.
Or he could have totally been, like, actually of that era, that type of actor.
Yeah.
Like if he was trying to fulfill that role of being like a see kind of Humphrey Bogart-esque kind of guy, that works, but at the same time, he didn't shine.
Yeah.
And I felt like a lot of time and a lot of lines are given to this guy, and to just be very underwhelmed by most of his performance, I'd say all of it. You know what I mean? Never wowed by anything that he does, says, acts, portrays. It's just kind of like a big,
I liked his dialogue and his bad attitude enough that the acting didn't really take away from either of those things for me.
See,
but I get where you're coming from. It doesn't really... It's a little bit too exaggerated for the...
He's the muscle, I get it. But he's also supposed to be, like, quippy.
Yeah.
If he's supposed to fulfill the Humphrey Bogart kind of role. Because he's John Polito's Tom Reagan.
Yeah.
He's, like, the confidant. And he does give a couple smart comments, but it never feels good. It never feels like, oh, this is a cool thing they're doing. They're having, like, a battle of wits right now, you know. It never really goes that far. And it just kind of was like, oh, they gave him a couple good lines, that's all. It sounds like I'm picking apart this movie, but it's just things that I noticed. You like the soundtrack? I cannot remember the score for the life of me. Which
it's just that one line that they repeat a couple times. I just wanted to mention I thought it was well written. I don't want to make it seem like I thought it was the best thing ever.
The dream thing I thought was really fucking bizarre. I get if they're trying to, like, in some way make that a callback or, like, a reference to maybe something that used to be a thing in noir movies, but that felt so weird. I don't feel like that was self-aware. I had a dream. They kind of, like, constantly forebode with imagery that is akin to his dream of him losing his hat, right?
Yeah.
I did not care for that. That crossed the line of being too corny for me.
Okay.
I think a lot of the backstabbing or the double-crossing that takes place in this movie, it doesn't really feel like it pays off ever. It just kind of happens. And those are my main gripes. Paul, was there anything else that didn't work for you?
I don't have any concrete suggestions for how to do this, but I think the movie could have been a little bit shorter. So, like I said, no clue what you could have cut out. I have no clue what was cut out. I have no clue what was in the script that they didn't shoot. Felt maybe a little long this time around.
They could have cut the scene where the cops are, like, shooting into the bar.
Sure.
That was needless. I think they could have cut a lot of the stuff with Verna. We already get, like, there's a thing going on, but they spend a lot of time just, like, pointless, like, you gotta help Bernie. Whatever. We get it after the first time. We don't need to see it 3 more times, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was necessary. I don't think a lot of the showing the politicians stuff was entirely necessary, because a lot of time is spent with them in the office and kind of like, And it's not even like long scenes, but they do call back to them a lot. And that could have been cut. I think showing Tom Regan like placing bets a lot of times was pointless. Like, we get he has a gambling problem and he's in debt. We don't need to see him constantly gambling more. I mean, I get if maybe you're trying to make like a symbolic kind of thing where he's getting in more and more, like,
yeah,
even
I think
the
that's
guy who knows
more of
everything
like just
doesn't know
they're
everything.
trying to make a motif out of his behavior.
But there's a lot of it, and there was a lot of time him placing bets that could have been cut. I think they had 3 of them, but maybe only do like 1 or 2. I don't know. That resonates a lot with me when you say it should have been cut. Those are places I would definitely trim the fat.
Yeah, I can't tell what I would have wanted to have cut, but I just know that this time, and I never felt like this before about this movie, this time it felt a little bit longer than I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So,
what else didn't work for you?
I mean, that's about everything. I want to hear more about what... I guess...
I got something else for you.
Yeah, hit me.
I forgot to mention, I actually really didn't like John Polito in this.
Really?
I really appreciate what his character is supposed to be, as like I was able to dissect his character. But he's like Danny DeVito / The Sopranos / The Godfather. I was like, oh man. Him and Bernie were just like too loud for me. I have that problem sometimes where a character will feel too cartoony for me. Those two felt way too cartoony for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but one thing that I really did love was the last shot in this movie when they're walking away from the burial. It's almost a shot directly taken out of The Third Man. If the last scene is almost shot for shot. I didn't see it at the time, but I was like, oh, I love this shot. I love what they're doing here, and I love what's happening. Later, I was like, oh shit. You know, they're doing a lot of like noir callbacks. That was actually just like taken from The Third Man. And there's this one screen cap that I would have loved to take for this movie. If I was going to do like The Noir Crossing, Great Job, that would be the exact same screen cap I would do for The Third Man, Great Job. But I'm not going to use that because I have a better one from Darjeeling. But yeah, that shot, I ooze over that shot. When I first saw it in The Third Man, I just was gaga. It gave me chills. And when I saw it in this one, it gave me chills too. So.
Hell yeah.
Was there anything that you said you wanted to hear more? Like, do you have any other...
Oh, no, I don't have really much that didn't work for me. I pretty much like almost everything about this movie, but I recognize its flaws. I just don't care about them.
Gotcha. No, that's fair, too. That's fair.
It's just one of those ones where it's like, this was the first, like, really well done gangster movie I ever saw. I saw this, like, way before The Godfather. Saw this before I saw The Departed. Just always going to have a special place in my heart, and it was a fun one. So I guess, would you recommend this to anyone?
Sadly, no. There is a lot I enjoyed about it.
Yeah.
There is a lot I could praise for it. I mean, it's the perfect 90s gangster movie, really.
Sure.
It does a competent job being a noir movie. It does a competent job being a gangster movie. It does a competent job being a period piece, period prohibition piece, you know. I just think there are so many better alternatives out there.
Sure.
That I would say Gangs in New York for a really ethnic, big-timey, you know, like, here's New York with the Irish kind of, like, movie. I'd say The Godfather for gangster. I'd say The Third Man for the noir. You know what I mean? Like, this falls squarely in the middle of doing everything good, but to see something great, it doesn't hit the mark, and...
Sure.
There's a glut of crime movies out there. This is not one that you need to go out of your way to see, unfortunately. Yeah. How about you, Paul? Would you recommend this movie?
I would recommend this movie, yeah. I think it's a good one.
Merit?
I just think it's a good movie. It's an excellent exercise in filmmaking from the lens of, you know, adhering to genre convention while also telling a story that doesn't feel overdone. I know you didn't like all of it, but I would say the acting is interesting and competent for the most part. And I think anything by filmmakers who became what the Coen brothers have become at this point in their career is worth checking out. That would be my big argument.
we just talked about Darjeeling Limited and how you said, like, the only reason why someone would want to watch this movie is because it's a part of the bigger discography or the greater collection of Wes Anderson.
I mean, I think
I feel the same way about Coen Brothers.
Yeah, I think this is gonna go down, like, if we're gonna make a metaphor out of this, both of these movies will be the types of things where it's like, oh, this band who's really, well polished, well mixed, well equalized, well arranged music I've come to love. I want to go check out the stuff that they made before they kind of like clicked. And both of these movies to me feel like that type of thing. It's like, oh, they haven't fully realized the harmony between their writing style and their visual style, and they haven't fully realized how subtle or over the top acting should be in every single project yet. And so these are both sets of directors in both these movies, like, still figuring their stuff out, but doing it. Their shitty movies are a lot better than some people's best movies.
I know what you're saying. But
I wouldn't even call either of these shitty. But I would say, like,
I wouldn't either.
These are their less high quality movies in terms of the marriage of all the things people love about them, and yet they're still way better than even some directors' best movies.
Yep, I'd 100% agree to that. Yeah. That's so interesting, though.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to do some rationalizing, but I would recommend both of these.
Well, with that in mind, guys, I guess this has been Anson and Paul's Big Movie Podcast. I have been Anson Champ.
And I have been Paul Morgan, and we'll see you next time. El próximo vez.
El rumpiso...
Nexto.
Fortuna. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, guys. Next time.